Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue our journey watching Mike and Natalie on 90 Day Fiancé. Let's get to the show.
Baby, what's going on here?
I cannot.
Huh? You guys gotta give us a moment, dude. Like, we gotta wait.
So, 2 thumbs up on that. Mike is saying, hey, let's get the cameras out of here. We gotta wait on this. It's a good move.
That's why you're frustrated? Because you want me to stop eating meat and go to church?
Listen, when we talk about child, I don't want my child to be confused. Because there is nothing worse for a little kid to see that father and mother are not alike.
I don't want to read into anything, but if I'm going to read into that, she just said something. She says there's nothing worse than a child seeing a father and a mother who are not alike. I wonder if that points to her narrative of her own traumas that she's been through as a child. Who knows? But I wouldn't be surprised. It'd be a question that someone would ask her if they were her therapist, for sure.
And I don't want to put so much on my little baby that he doesn't understand. For you it's easy. Oh, it doesn't matter, he will choose. Does he believe in God or doesn't he believe in God? Does he eat meat or doesn't he eat meat?
Yes,
Listen,
baby, they will choose.
Child,
they will choose.
Confusing.
It's not confusing.
Okay, so as always, the way I see this is that this is, both of them are rational. For her, she's saying, we're going to put our kids in a pretty weird position because I'm going to want my kids to be religious. And maybe you won't want your kids to be religious. And so we're going to be putting our kids in a pretty weird space. And I'm going to want my kids not to eat meat. And you're not going to care if your kids eat meat. So we're going to put our kids in this weird position. That's rational, and that's good to think about. And from his perspective, he's like, yeah, the kids will have to make that choice, but, they'll live and everything will be fine. So both of them are right, and it's just a matter of, for each of them to decide for themselves what they want in their future. It's rational for them to be thinking about this at this point. For her, this might be a deal breaker, as I've been saying. Maybe for her, it's like, well, I don't want to put my kids through that. That's a deal breaker to me. For him, it sounds like it's not a deal breaker. It's just a matter of a choice. You don't have to argue with each. You can have those differences. For her, it can be a deal breaker. For him, it's not. And you don't have to argue about it in that way. You can say, well, that's just how I believe, and we're just going to agree to disagree, or we're just going to agree to have different values around that and proceed accordingly given that difference. What I'm worried about is that they're going to have a fight about it, or they're going to try to persuade the other person to change their mind, which I don't think is going to happen. So let's watch.
If you laughing about what I'm doing, what is important to me, what my child would think.
I'm not laughing or making fun of you. Her pressuring, about beliefs in gods and raising kids and this and that. But I don't think it's a problem. Like, we're all individual people, you know what I mean? It doesn't, it's not a bad thing,
Right. So that's his stance. He's like, hey, in my family, if we all have different beliefs, that's okay with me. For her, maybe that's not okay with her, and that's okay as well. It's just a matter of making a choice as to whether or not you want to be with someone who has those differences.
Do you feel like I'm not trying to accept you for who you are?
You told me you don't believe in God. You don't want to believe in God.
I don't believe in God.
You play bowling. That's fun with you. You're not interested in anything else.
No, I'm interested in many other things.
Yeah. So I don't know if this is a language barrier thing, meaning that if we could hear her speaking in her native language, if she would have more nuance to that. But she just said, you're interested in bowling. There's something wrong with you. So he just got done saying, do you think that I judge you for your religion? Because I don't. I don't think anything's wrong with you.
Because we're going to have a kid, and you feel like he's going to be confused because I don't believe, and you believe. Now, can I ask you a question? If we both believe, and there's all kinds of people that he's going to school with, and all kinds of people around, because there's 4 other billion people in the world, and they don't believe in God, and they tell him there's no God and this and that, don't you think he's already going to be confused, and he's going to come
One time
home?
he goes to school?
And you
I don't know if that's an argument that's going to go over well. And I don't even think that this is necessarily, at least the majority of what's happening right now. She's in a emotional downward spiral, which I would assume has more to do with some trauma of rejection or being misunderstood being triggered in her. So he's trying to talk about the religious difference and debate their children being affected by things, which is fine. It's a good conversation to have. But if I were there, I'd be like, okay, yeah, good. You're talking about, but I think more fundamentally, Natalie, what are you feeling right now? What are your emotions right now? What's going on for you right now? Because I would suspect she would say something like, I feel completely disheartened by the fact that we have differences that seem to be completely incompatible. And that makes me really scared because I'm scared for me. I'm scared for our kids. I'm scared. I'm just scared. I'm in a state of complete fear right now. I would suspect that she might say something along those lines. So getting into the details and the sort of debate style that they're having right now about what their children are going to go through, these potentially fictional children, there's too much wiggle room there to debate, to agree on anything. So, but I don't know. Let's see how this goes.
We all make a choice. Why can't I make my choice? Why can't you respect that? I went to church with you yesterday. I'm trying to support you. And you're being mad at me because I say that I don't believe in God? I can't stand here and tell you I believe in God. And that does not make me a bad person.
Right. And so I think now he's panicking, which would make sense. And we hear his tone of voice and the sort of things that he says when he's panicking. I think if we were to hook both of them up to a bunch of biomarker measurements, we would see that both of them are in a high stress state right now. So we'll see how they navigate this. It's not a disaster. We've seen much worse on this show. So I'm going to take a guess and say that they're on the road to recovery, actually, at this point. They seem to have kind of crested a hill and that they're not going to escalate from this point. So let's watch. And by the way, I want to mention something before moving forward. I want to acknowledge that you might have a different take on this couple. You might think, well, I think this, and that's okay. In the same way that these two people can have differences in whether or not they believe in God, you and I can differ on how we look at this couple. And the expectation that you and I are always going to agree about everything would be absurd. If all humans agreed on everything, then there wouldn't be politics, right? So there are just different ways of looking at things. We have different personalities. We all have different histories. We have different experiences. We have different biases. And I have mine. And my take is not an unbiased take. My take is inherently biased, as is yours, as is all of ours. So it's okay. And part of my lens might be weird and might be wrong, might be problematic, might be sexist, might be racist, might be ableist, might be ageist, might be heterosexist or transphobic or something. There's all these possibilities that are likely true. And I do my best, but we just need to acknowledge that, normalize it, and it's okay. Now, it doesn't mean that it exonerates me from looking at myself. It just means that we don't have to panic when there are disagreements and there are different. I am not involved in these people's lives. And I'm guessing you aren't either. Maybe you are. Now, sometimes the cast members literally watch these videos. And the thing that I always say is everything that I'm saying in these reaction videos is based on me watching a reality TV show. Let's just acknowledge that I am watching a reality TV show, which when I put it in that term, I hope people understand the semi-absurdity to that. Because one, the TV show is editing it for a particular narrative. I hope people understand that this isn't just like an impartial camera being pointed at these people, that they probably get 100 times more footage and they edit it down and kind of move stuff around because they want to tell an interesting story. And the producers or whoever it is that are telling those stories are piecing together things to tell a particular story. So there's that. Plus, the cast members are showing us a particular version of themselves. We've seen other cast members who came across, at least to me, as being pretty well put together, pretty nice. And then we hear about criminal allegations repeatedly of intimate partner violence behind the scenes and in the history of some of these individuals. And so now, that isn't to say that someone with intimate partner violence history would exhibit that on a reality TV show, but I hope you get my point, is that we're seeing a version of these people that they're choosing to show us, and then the TV show people are choosing to show us this, and then I'm seeing it through my lens, and I'm reacting. Everything that I say should be taken with a grain of salt. Now, I'm open to reflecting on my bias. I've throughout my career, any good therapist and professor for that matter in my field dedicates themselves to an almost daily practice of being humble about one's perspective. One of the worst things a professor can do is fall in love with their own point of view. It's just one of the worst things. I've seen professors do that. When I was a student, I would see some professors who were clearly in love with their point of view and were not open and were not humble. And I dedicated myself at that point. I was like, my God, I never want to be like that. And it's tempting sometimes. I get a lot of respect as a professor and as a therapist. And so people have a hard time opposing me. And I just have to remind myself that with my power comes the seduction of narcissism in terms of my own point of view. So I really strive to see that and to say, well, I'm doing the best I can, and I'm sure there are some things I'm saying that have worth, but God knows. I mean, I just had a supervision meeting recently, and I was supervising a novice therapist, and after the meeting, I was just like, boy, did I blow it. And then I apologized because I said, you know what, I think I was assuming too much, and I was jumping the gun, and I wasn't really listening to what you had to say. And I couldn't do that if I didn't really force myself. If I just sort of laid back and went on cruise control, I would end up falling in love with my perspective. And so I never want to be that way. I think to be truly wise or smart or right-headed is to know you're wrong-headed half the time. Put that on a t-shirt. So I want to be clear about that. And the other thing is that as we're watching this couple, some of you out there will have similar reactivity to either one or both of these people, and you're going to be triggered. And my reaction to them could also be triggering to you. And as I always say, it's important that you take care of yourself. When I say at the end of these videos, take care of yourself, I'm not meaning like just take care of yourself, like, hey, have a self-care day or something. I do mean that, but I also mean we're getting into some pretty heavy stuff here. And trauma is no joke. Relational trauma is no joke. And when we're watching this, I mean, I'll tell you, when I watch this couple, I'm trying to figure out what is going on with me as I watch this couple, but something in my history, either professionally or personally, is being touched on while watching this video. And so I am periodically stopping the recording and just sort of relaxing, hanging out with my wife, hanging out with my animals, my 2 dogs and 2 cats, taking a walk or whatever, deep breathing, thinking, relaxing my body. Because if I don't do that, my body starts to go like this, my mind starts to go like this, and those aren't good things for me for a lot of reasons, just my own self-care. And I implore you to do the same for your own sake, for the sake of your sleep, for the sake of your well-being. And if you find yourself significantly being triggered by anything in life, you absolutely need to find a therapist. It is critical. If things like this are triggering you significantly, there is nothing better than going to a therapist. What I always say is, if you fall down the stairs and you break your arm, you don't walk around the house going, ow, my arm hurts, like every couple days. You're like, oh my God, my arm hurts. No, you go to the doctor, you go to the physician, right? And anyone who didn't go to the physician, you'd be like, what's wrong with you? You fell down the stairs and broke your arm. Go to the physician. There's people who specialize in helping you with that. Now, I know some of you have trouble accessing therapeutic services, and I know that that's a reality, even in my country. And so I'm not going to act like it's super easy. And sometimes there are barriers, and I don't know what to do about that, honestly. So we all need to do what we can to raise awareness for the need for more therapists. We need politicians and voters and tax money to be utilized in this way to destigmatize. A lot of you have emailed me and said that watching these videos has encouraged you to go to therapy, which is great. And then there are other people that were saying, yeah, when I read comments about people going to therapy, that is even more reason for me to go to therapy. You know, they watch these videos, are like, oh, maybe I should go to therapy. Then they read a comment like, oh, you helped me to go to therapy. And then that caused them to go to therapy. It's just like, so by the way, if you're in therapy, you know, let's destigmatize. Let's make those comments, you know, let's encourage others. Let's lead the charge, if you will. You know, I've been to a ton of therapy and it's priceless. It's really great. Now, like I said, there's an issue with access and we just need to do what we can. But anyway, so I say all these things because I want us to acknowledge the reality of our emotions in all contexts. So let's all take the time to notice our emotions, check in with yourself. And if you have a hard time knowing your distress level, you might want to just periodically stop these videos and take about 5 minutes to really think about it. You know, how am I feeling? How's my chest doing? You know, usually people's distress is up here, not always, but how's your breathing? Is your breathing slow and calm, or is it fast and tight? Is it jagged breathing? These kinds of things. How does your neck feel? How does your face feel? You know, when we're distressed, we kind of do this because we're literally cringing in preparation to being hit, or our heart rate is getting up in preparation to fight someone. It's important that we all do this, including myself, all the time. And it would just mortify me to think that someone watching this would be hurt by watching. It would just be the bane of my existence. It would make this whole thing like worth packing up and going home, because it's like I don't want to do that. You know, at the very least, just have a friend or a spouse or someone around you can just turn to and be like, I'm stressed out. Can you hold me? You know, I'm stressed out. Can you listen to me? But I predict watching this will have already been triggering at least some people. Either you have been in a relationship with someone like Natalie, or you have emotional trauma similar to the way Natalie exhibits it. Or you've been in the mom's position and you've had a child like this before. There's a lot of different ways in which this could bring up things for us. So let's take a deep breath and let's remind ourselves that we're safe. Anyway, let's get back to the show.
I'm done.
So there's some more of that punishing anger that is trying to punish, I think. I'm guessing that's how it's received by Mike. And why would someone do that? If I'm reading it right, could be biased. That usually comes from, so if at the top we have punishing hostility, underneath that we have tremendous anger. Underneath that we have tremendous hurt and pain. And underneath that we have a perception of behavior from the outside that is incredibly hurtful and painful. This is why it's important in therapy to investigate those layers. At what layer do you want to intervene at? Because if we dig down deep and we find that she sees the world in such a way that produces natural feelings of pain and hurt and disappointment, then maybe it's the perception, maybe it's the perceptual personality, characterological, perceptual realm, that if that can be addressed, then the hurt won't be as intense, or it might not even be there. And thus you won't need and the anger won't happen, and then the punishing hostility won't happen. What a lot of people do is they'll just try to manage the punishing hostility or placate it or something without going to therapy and really addressing the characterological perceptual realm. And why would someone have a perceptual realm that might be off a little bit? Well, it all has to do with schemas and personality. When you're young and the world teaches you that people are terrible and that people are mean, and that when there's a difference, it will result in very bad things, then you'll see the world through that lens. As an older person, you'll see, like, when there's a difference, when there's a disagreement, when someone doesn't comply with my wishes, something very bad happens right after that. Abuse, abandonment, or something else that's terrible. And thus, as an adult, when there is any kind of a difference or any kind of mild rejection, then I'm predicting, or I'm feeling all of that hurt, and then I get very angry, and then I do something with that anger. I don't know. It's total speculation. Oh, the other thing I should say, while I'm on the soapboxes today, is we never, after watching this show long enough, we as viewers of the TV show never know what's really happening. With some other couples like Colt and Larissa, in the beginning seasons, we see a certain narrative, and then later we see a different narrative based on how the cast members reveal themselves to us or the show edits it. And so maybe I'll have watched ahead and know a different story. Maybe Mike has been secretly or behind the scenes abusing her this whole time. That's a possibility that we just have to say, well, that's a question mark. There's no way for us to know that because we're watching a TV show. So I just want to acknowledge that that could be happening, and I wouldn't know. Maybe you know because you've watched ahead, or behind the scenes, or you're literally these people and you know those experiences. So just know that whenever I'm talking from the show, I'm using it as a jumping off point so that we can all learn about ourselves and the people around us. And what we can learn about this is that layered approach of understanding ourselves and other people can really help, because it helps us to conceptualize people accurately and so that we can have compassion. And it also gives a direction for what we should be targeting if we're trying to improve our lives.
I'm just frustrated with Natalie and everything she's throwing at me right now. It's too much. I just need some self-reflection time.
What are you not sure about?
Just unsure about where I am in life right now,
If I'm reading this right, which I can never know, I just want to remind us all how we got here. So they were having a wonderful time together as a couple. They have a difference in religion, and she brought him to her church, and they had a conversation, and she was trying to convince him to convert to her Christianity. And he was saying, sorry, I'm not going to do that. She became activated. Then they had an evening together, which we didn't see, but it sounds like things didn't go well. She woke up in the morning and was giving him the cold shoulder. And then they started talking about kids. And she was worried that they were going to be different and that they were going to parent their kids differently. And now we're here. For those of you who don't know, I've been doing an audio podcast for over 12 years. So if you only watch the videos that I do on YouTube, there is other content that you can access on your phone if you go to a podcast app and subscribe to Psychology in Seattle. You can get our numerous, over 1,000 episodes that we talk about lots of various different things. So if you want to, you can check that out. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.